Usually when you think about a high-stakes boardroom negotiation, there's this foundational expectation of mutual survival, right?
Yeah,
It's like
upset.
you walk in, you give a little, the other side gives a little, you shake hands, and, well, everyone walks away with their pride and their assets relatively intact.
Right. It's the classic, comfortable win-win compromise. We lean on that heavily in modern society.
Totally.
We operate under this assumption that all conflicts, no matter how deeply entrenched, can be resolved if everyone just, sits down at the table and cools their tempers.
But then you look at one of the most famously analyzed stories in human history, and suddenly that boardroom table is completely flipped over.
Boy, it's shattered.
Yeah. We're looking at a negotiation where compromise isn't just ineffective. I mean, it is practically fatal. Welcome to today's deep dive.
It's a really intense topic today.
It really is. We are taking a fascinating stack of sources ranging from deep literary theses to expansive academic and theological commentaries to analyze the Exodus plagues.
But, and this is the catch, we are absolutely not looking at this as a simple ancient disaster story.
Right, far from it.
When you actually peel back the layers of the text, it reveals itself as this, masterclass in high-stakes psychological negotiation, precise divine boundaries, and a highly provocative literary concept known as severe grace.
And just to set the ground rules for you as we jump in, we are treating this purely as a literary and historical exploration today.
Exactly.
We aren't taking sides, and we certainly aren't pushing any specific religious worldview or endorsing those viewpoints. Our mission is strictly to mine these incredible nuggets of human psychology and narrative structure hidden within the text itself.
To do that, we really have to start by setting the scene.
Right, so picture the backdrop. It is ancient Egypt, the absolute, undisputed superpower of the known world. The Israelites are enslaved, heavily integrated into the brutal day-to-day economic engine of the empire.
Then Moses, who is a man with a highly complicated background, right? Former prince of Egypt turned exile shepherd Teredi, he approaches Pharaoh to demand the release of his people.
And the commentaries we are looking at stress that this initial meeting is not just an epic clash of political power.
No, not at all. It is a fundamental collision of entire worldviews.
Because Pharaoh thought he could, out-negotiate Moses, the consequences escalated beyond a simple geopolitical conflict.
It led to a total unraveling of the Egyptian cosmos.
Yeah, but we don't start with the plagues. We actually start right at that negotiation table. I mean, Pharaoh doesn't just look at Moses and issue a flat no.
Right, that is a very common misconception. Pharaoh operates entirely like a seasoned politician here.
He does.
He attempts to broker a deal through a series of highly specific calculated offers, which the sources break down for us. Over the course of their interactions, Pharaoh lays out 4 distinct counterproposals.
Okay, let's unpack this. Offer number 1. Pharaoh says, go ahead and sacrifice to your God, but do it right here in Egypt.
Which, on the surface, sounds like a reasonable religious accommodation, right?
It does. But Moses immediately refuses. And the sources explain exactly why. Moses tells Pharaoh that the Israelites would be sacrificing animals, specifically rams, which the Egyptians heavily revered.
Yeah, the ram was considered deeply sacred. Later historical texts even associate it with major deities.
So Moses points out the catastrophic logistical flaw. He essentially says, if my people publicly slaughter your sacred animals in the middle of your cities, your citizens will riot and literally stone us to death.
It's a complete non-starter.
Exactly.
And Pharaoh sees the political reality of that, so he pivots to offer number 2. He says, fine, go to the wilderness, but do not go very far.
Ah, trying to keep them on a short leash?
Precisely. Maintain geographical proximity so the empire can reassert control at any moment.
When Moses rejects that, and the situation begins to escalate, Pharaoh comes back with offer number 3. He says, only the men can go.
And the superficial logic he uses is that the gods only require the men for a religious festival.
But the subtext is glaringly obvious. Leave the women and children behind.
It is classic hostage-taking. He is attempting to splinter the family unit to guarantee the men return.
Wow.
And finally, when Pharaoh is truly desperate and the empire is beginning to fracture, he throws down the 4th offer. Everyone goes, families and all, but leave your flocks and herds behind.
He targets their entire economic livelihood. He wants them to leave all their wealth and resources as collateral.
Exactly.
But looking at all of this back and forth, I have to ask a blunt question. Isn't Moses essentially running a massive deception here?
How do you mean?
Well, he keeps standing in front of Pharaoh asking for a 3-day religious retreat into the wilderness, But he knows, and Pharaoh clearly suspects, that they intend to permanently escape Egypt. Is Moses just lying to his face to get out the door?
What's fascinating here is how the academic sources address that exact tension. Moses is actually being radically honest.
Wait, really?
Yeah. When Pharaoh demands they leave their flocks behind as collateral, Moses gives a very specific reply. He says, "We know not with what we must serve the Lord until we come there."
Oh, wow.
The text is doing something brilliant here. It is foreshadowing a completely unprecedented paradigm shift.
So he genuinely doesn't know what's coming.
Precisely. This isn't just an occasional animal sacrifice. It is the birth of a completely new national identity. God hasn't handed Moses an itemized itinerary.
Right.
Moses is telling Pharaoh the absolute terrifying truth. We have to take every single thing we own because we don't even know what this new deity is going to ask of us once we get out there.
That's incredible. And because Pharaoh refuses to accept those complete unconditional terms, the negotiations utterly collapse.
And that collapse is punctuated by the plagues.
Right. But the sources highlight that viewing these events simply as a list of random natural disasters completely misses the literary genius of the text. They are highly targeted, methodical uncreations.
Uncreation is the perfect academic term for it. The narrative meticulously structures the plagues as a systematic undoing of the natural order established in Genesis.
Right, because in Genesis you have God separating the waters, bringing forth dry land, filling the air with life.
Exactly. And in Exodus, those exact elements are weaponized to dismantle the society that claims to rule them.
You see that progression so vividly. First, you have the waters of the Nile turning toxic. Then frogs swarming from that water onto the land. Then gnats rising directly out of the dust of the earth. And then the swarming flies filling the air. Earth, water, air. The foundational building blocks of creation turned into a nightmare.
And the texts and note, these aren't just your standard, annoying houseflies buzzing around the kitchen.
No, the historical translations use a very specific term, dog flies.
It sounds like pure body horror.
It does. The text described them as aggressive, blood-sucking insects that hurl themselves like tiny javelins at the human body. They specifically targeted the soft tissues, like the edges of the eyelids. It isn't just an inconvenience, it is a physical, psychological terror campaign.
But the narrative introduces a massive structural shift right at this terrifying moment with the flies.
The invisible wall.
Exactly. God establishes a division. The land of Goshen, the specific region where the enslaved Israelites live, is completely and totally exempted from this plague.
The imagery is wild. It's like a Category 5 hurricane coming ashore, ripping roofs off houses, flooding streets, and then just stopping dead at the city limits as if it hit a magical glass wall.
It's an incredible visual.
On one side of the street, absolute devastation. On the other side, perfect calm. Is this just a practical way to protect the Israelites, or is there a deeper message being sent to Pharaoh here?
It is an incredibly profound theological and political statement. Up until this specific moment, the Egyptian sorcerers and priests could replicate some of the earlier plagues.
Right, they could turn water to blood, summon frogs.
Yeah, it made the whole conflict look like a chaotic battle of competing magic tricks. But a ravenous swarm of dogflies that respects a geographical border.
You can't fake that.
You cannot.
Yeah.
It proves to the Egyptian court that this is not random natural disaster. This is highly precise divine intervention. This establishes Yahweh as the divider of peoples.
Wow.
And more importantly, it is a direct fatal strike against the foundational Egyptian concept of ma'at.
Right, I've seen that term in the readings. Ma'at, that's the ancient Egyptian principle of universal order, right?
It is the bedrock of their entire civilization.
Yeah.
Ma'at represents justice, truth, and cosmic balance. The sun rising, the Nile flooding predictably, society functioning smoothly, that was all Ma'at.
And Pharaoh was the protector of that.
He was the living, breathing embodiment of Ma'at. His entire legitimacy to rule and his justification for enslaving others rested on his ability to maintain this cosmic order.
So by sending absolute uncontrollable chaos into the lavish Egyptian homes while simultaneously creating a pocket of perfect, untouchable peace in the squalid slave quarters.
The text is doing something revolutionary.
It's elevating the lowly slaves while casting down the most powerful empire on earth. It proves Pharaoh is completely impotent. He cannot control the cosmos he claims to rule.
It strips away his divinity and exposes him as just a man losing control of his country.
But that precise control brings up a really tough, lingering question.
What's that?
If this divine force is so capable, so surgical, that it can put up invisible walls to protect people, why use mass destruction in the first place?
That is the big question.
Why turn the entire country into a bloody, terrifying wasteland? This transitions us directly into the academic thesis regarding a concept called severe grace.
Right, this thesis tackles that exact paradox. It argues that we have a very sanitized view of benevolence. We think grace must always be gentle and polite.
Right, like a soft pat on the back.
Exactly. But when you are dealing with a horrific, deeply entrenched systemic evil like the multi-generational brutal enslavement of an entire ethnic group, polite requests do not work. Forceful confrontation is absolutely required.
The sources call this an incarnational methodology, which is a heavy academic phrase. Let's break that down.
Well, incarnational essentially means making something physical or material. For generations, the Egyptian empire benefited from the invisible violence of slavery.
All hidden away in the brickyards.
Right, so the elite could live in luxury. God's methodology here is to take the violence of that oppressive system and make it physically manifest in the environment of the oppressors.
He forces them to experience the chaos their society is built upon.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The sources point out that the grace in this story is not found in a lack of violence. The grace is found in the pauses and the warnings.
The narrative pacing is highly intentional.
It really is. After the very first plague, the text gives a full 7-day pause. Then, right before the final plague, there is a profound 3-day pause of total suffocating darkness.
It literally forces the entire empire to stop. It gives everyone time to sit and meditate on what is happening to their world.
And during the plague of hail, God actually gives the Egyptians explicit instructions on how to escape. Bring your slaves and your livestock inside, or they will die.
Those who listened were saved.
But I'm going to push back on this idea of severe grace.
Okay, let's hear it.
So if someone drops a piano from a third-story window, but yells, "Look out," first, does that really make them benevolent?
That is an excellent way to frame it.
I mean, yes, they gave a warning, but they still dropped a piano.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, your analogy needs one crucial adjustment. The difference here is that the piano is a targeted strike against the infrastructure of an oppressive, tyrannical regime.
Okay, I'm with you.
And the warning isn't just a courtesy shout. It is a genuine, actionable off-ramp. God is providing a way for anyone in Egypt to step out from under the judgment.
Okay. And there's one detail from the sources regarding this grace that absolutely blew my mind.
The crops.
Yes, because Goshen was protected by that invisible wall from the plagues of hail and locusts. The Israelite crops of flax and barley survived completely untouched.
The implications of that are staggering.
When the plagues end, the Israelites pack up and leave Egypt. The surviving Egyptians have just had their entire agricultural system decimated. They were facing mass starvation. Because Goshen was spared, there is an entire region full of unharvested, perfectly preserved food left behind. The precise grace of that invisible wall literally created the stockpile of food that fed the enemy after the war was over.
It is a stunning, beautiful paradox. The very act of protecting the oppressed created the resources that preserved the lives of the oppressors who remain.
So what does this all mean for you?
Right. How does this apply today?
Exactly. We have talked about uncreation, severe grace, ancient history. How does this actually apply to the listener? To bridge that gap, we turn to a brilliant analogy from one of our sources, the talking bear.
Oh yeah, the talking bear.
A hunter goes deep into the woods because he wants a fur coat. He raises his rifle, but the bear holds up a paw and says, "Wait, I'm hungry and I want a good meal. Let's sit down and compromise."
And they actually negotiate.
They negotiate. The result of this perfectly reasonable compromise, the bear walks away with a full stomach and the hunter is inside the bear.
The moral of the story is brutal but true. Compromise on your core principles is fatal. You simply cannot negotiate with something that fundamentally wants to consume you.
And the sources apply this directly to the psychology of Pharaoh's 4 compromises. Modern writers view those 4 boardroom offers as the exact psychological traps used by complacency today.
Or by an adversary, as the theological sources frame it, to derail human growth.
Right, let's map those out. The first trap, worship in the land.
That translates perfectly to modern complacency. It's the voice that says, be spiritual, but don't actually change your lifestyle. Stay exactly where you are.
Then there's the second trap. Don't go very far. This is the internal voice that says, okay, make a change, but don't be a fanatic. Keep religion or this new habit comfortable.
The third trap, only the men go, is the push to compartmentalize your life. Keep your transformation private. Don't let it affect your family or your relationships.
And the final trap, leave the flocks behind. This is the ultimate safety net. It's the voice whispering, keep your wallet closed. Don't invest your actual resources into your beliefs.
It's the illusion of safety.
Exactly. Whether you are religious or not, this is the blueprint of how we sabotage our own growth. We want to start a new habit or change a career, but we leave our flocks behind as a safety net, just in case we want to retreat to our old lives.
Pharaoh knew exactly how human nature works. He knew that if he kept their wealth, their security, they would inevitably return to Egypt. True liberation requires a clean, complete break.
Wow. We have covered an unbelievable amount of ground today.
We really have.
We started at a boardroom table with a Pharaoh's compromises. We explored uncreation and the terrifying precision of dogflies.
And those invisible walls in Goshen.
Right, and the brilliant paradox of severe grace that leaves food for a starving enemy. And finally, how compromise on core principles is like negotiating with a bear.
It really reframes the entire narrative from a simple disaster story into a profound exploration of boundaries and liberation. And, this raises an important question.
Let's hear it.
Recall Moses' statement to Pharaoh, "We know not with what we must serve the Lord until we come there." Think about your own life. What wilderness or new chapter are you refusing to enter right now simply because it demands total commitment and doesn't come with an itemized itinerary?
That's a heavy question.
It is, because sometimes the only way to break free from your own Egypt is to step out completely, willing to discover what is required only after you arrive.
That is a brilliant thought to end on. You cannot leave your flocks behind. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.